So thank you, everybody. It's a wonderful Thursday. Although we know all sorts of craziness is happening around the country, we're seeing numbers spike, and of course that means potential closing of places. And we just want to send a friendly reminder out there. You know, Stacy and I have partnered on this webinar series, Leading Through Change. Obviously, we're going through a lot of change right now at a very rapid pace. And so we wanted to make sure that you guys had an opportunity to just hear from security and safety professionals out there who are, you know, doing their due diligence to vet solutions and best practices and what's working and what's not working. And today's focus is to keep your campus safe. And that could mean your school campus or your work campus, and just in general, you know, campus safety, although we will be focusing a lot on school safety since it is America's Safe Schools Week. We're honoring that this week. So I'm so excited to have Stacy Porter from Porter Global Security on this webinar series. We've had a lot of fun over the summer in quarantine, right, Stacy?
Yeah,
got to do something to break it up a little bit. So we've been having a lot of fun with our webinar series. And so I'm excited to go over some best practices to keep your campus safe. So thanks so much for joining us today, and we hope you get a lot of value out of the webinar today. Just some webinar housekeeping rules. Of course, we're going to record the webinar, and we will send you the recording along with the presentation slides. We're going to try and stay on track for a 45-minute session so that we have 15-minute Q&A at the end, but please feel free to submit, you know, any questions in the chat or in the question and answer box throughout. You know, we're happy to be able to answer those for you. And then you will have a survey at the end of the webinar. We absolutely adore your feedback. It's what has made these webinars in our series happen, is because you guys have requested this type of information, and so we're excited to bring it to you guys. So let's meet the experts. Stacy Porter from Porter Global Security. He is of a different, I feel like he comes from a different grain of salt, or I don't know how to explain it, but he's a high-level safety and security professional, but he also brings, you know, a little bit of humor to it in all the right professional ways, and it just makes, it's a breath of fresh air when I get to talk safety and security with him, because he knows his stuff, but he also brings things to my attention that I just would never have thought of, and isn't so stiff in the conversation. He's very open-minded, and he loves to brainstorm, and he loves to, you know, find new resources. And so I'm just excited to have him on the webinar today. He has an amazing background with vulnerability assessments and mitigation, security planning. You can see it all there. Risk assessments, investigative management operations, and he's a proud member of the International Association of Professional Security Consultants and the Atlanta Black Chambers. And I couldn't be more happy to have him by my side on this webinar today. Thank you so much, Stacy, for joining us. I think we lost you.
Nope, I am here, and I apologize.
Okay, there you are.
I'm still here. Yes, I just want to say thank you for having me. And up next, we'll be going over Ashley's biography. If Ashley, you want to talk about it briefly, we can go ahead and do that. But I'm looking forward to this presentation.
Thank you, Stacy. Yep, Ashley Davis, PunchAlert. I am known as the mother on a mission to bring communities together and save lives. I've worked with many CEOs and executives and solopreneurs to grow their personal and professional brands, but really just focus on, you know, help them focus on what they do best and what they're an expert in, and combine them with services and other experts that can help them grow their business. I just get really excited when I get to partner, you know, those strategic partnerships, and also dive in deep to the trenches of those organizations who are doing good, taking action, making change with the ultimate goal of making that better tomorrow. I recently am launching the Global Collective, and which I'm super excited about, and you'll hear more and more about that as time progresses. And also, I'm super excited about the Crisis Ready community. So if you are a professional who, lives and breathes preventative, measures and cannot stand to be reactive, but wants to be more proactive and build a culture of that proactiveness within your organization, check out the Crisis Ready community. You'll be surrounded by a lot of like-minded people there. So let's actually, before we get to questions, okay, and you please feel free to type questions in the chat box. I always like to ask Stacy, just something that maybe not many people know about him that he would like to share, so we can get to know Stacy a little bit better before we get started.
Okay. Like I said, I like to just loosen up and keep it lively, so I appreciate that. One of the things I'll mention, just a lot of people may not know about me. Of course, you're at my bio, have an extensive background with the federal government, and now I started my own business. But something fun regarding myself, last year before COVID-19 hit, of course, Atlanta is where I'm located. Atlanta is the Hollywood of the South. So they do a lot of filming in this area. And last year I got a phone call from a gentleman asking me would I be interested in doing executive protection for a well-known movie star that was filming a movie here. So I figured, you know what, if I can stand next to a president, I'm pretty sure I can stand next to one of these movie stars while they're filming. And we had an opportunity to talk. It's a Netflix movie. The movie's not out yet. I can't wait for it to come out so I can see how everything turned out. But it was very interesting being behind the scenes and how everything went down. And the person that I'm speaking of is Melissa McCarthy. Wonderful lady, awesome. She's very funny and very professional all at the same time. But we really hit it off, and thankfully we were able to get all the filming done before COVID-19 hit. So I guess whatever the movie pundits do as far as the editing and everything else that goes with that, hopefully the movie will be coming out soon on Netflix. But that was a great opportunity. That's not a direction I'm looking to go in with my business. But at the same time, I had some free time in between my scheduling, and the person reached out to me and asked would I be interested. So that was a lot of fun to do something like that.
Well, and that says a lot, right? When you just have someone go, I need executive protection in the Atlanta area. Who am I going to call? And then your name pops up, right? I can imagine exactly why, right? Because he knows that you're not going to take advantage of the situation. You're going to be the most professional person. You have full awareness of the area and everything else. So she would be in the best hands. And I'm a huge fan of Melissa McCarthy. So I love hearing that story.
Thanks.
Okay, so make sure you type your questions into the chat box. Okay, so we'll get started with security measures. Back to school, be safe and be smart. Obviously, a lot of us, I'm a parent of 5 kids, and so there's a little bit of anxiety here about letting our kids go back to school and have to endure, wearing a mask and the social distancing and all that kind of stuff. We hope that our kids, can maintain that social distancing and maintain those healthy habits that can keep us all safe. But we all know kids are kids, right? So what are some back to school safety tips that we can use? Stacey, I'm really excited to hear from your perspective on, how we can keep our kids safe at school. So did you want to get into this, or do you want to say something just a little bit before we get into the enhanced monitoring?
No, let's get right into it. I appreciate it.
Sounds good.
All right, just looking at this first slide, enhanced monitoring for properties that remain closed or have few staff on premises. I know in Georgia right now, and I'm pretty sure further up north, I know we do have a gentleman on the call who lives in North Carolina. Those schools have already opened. I know they're doing both virtual and some in-person classes, but a lot of schools haven't opened yet, or with the numbers continuously climbing as we've all been paying attention to the news, we want those doors to hopefully stay open and not close again. So this slide right here, again, I just want to talk briefly on is, the K-12 schools may be reopening, as I mentioned. But I know as schools start to open and you're bringing students back into the schools, how can they stop or hopefully, stop the spread of the COVID virus coming into the schools? Now, one of the things I wanted to point out is there's a lot of great technology out here today, and you have to be careful on which technology you choose because schools are very unique. A lot of times, especially our public schools, they're funded with federal money, and most times their budget is already planned out. But because of COVID-19, they had to adjust that budget and bring in various technologies, cleaning materials, cleaning companies to ensure the safety of the students and staff. But one of the things you also want to keep in mind is a lot of these schools may be dormant, meaning, you know, half the student population is only there and some are at home. But what's going on during off hours? You know, do we have a lot of vandalism going on within our schools? And if you do, what's going on with that, you know, surveillance? I'm sorry. Yes, one of the things we want to keep in mind is, let me apologize. Let me get back to this. Yes, Ashley, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I apologize. My headsets were dying on me, so I just want to make sure we're okay. All right. One of the things we want to keep in mind is vandalism. You know, I know a lot of schools, they have the camera coverage out there, which is great. And I tell everybody, you know, the cameras there are not the end all be all, but it is a tool that can be used for surveillance, especially doing investigative purposes. If someone were to do something suspicious in and around the school properties, as well as your business, hopefully you have some type of camera coverage or some type of technology in place where it can alert the organization or the administration, whoever's in charge of monitoring the system. And also they can reach out to the local police department and let them know, hey, this is going on in and around our schools. And, you know, they can stop what's going on in and around your schools. Another thing I would suggest when I talk with schools is building that great relationship with the local law enforcement department. How often are they surveilling the schools, riding around, checking on various things? There are so many different access points within your schools, and you want to ensure those access points are secured and monitored as they should be. I know many of our schools have the resource officers inside, and they do a wonderful job as well. I know that's been a lot of talk before COVID-19 of disbanding the resource officers in our schools because of various situations or problems that have been occurring. But I think if you use them properly as you should, that's a definite tool to have on your premises to ensure you're not having any type of break-ins or property theft within the schools. Kids right now, they're at home, they're in the house, they're bored, and, you know, idle minds after a while just start to come together and say, okay, what can we do? And you'll start to see some of these things occurring within our schools. There's a lot of expensive equipment within the schools, and kids know that. So we have to do our due diligence and ensure that we're doing surveillance and we're securing our schools as we should. Schools are soft targets, and there's so much that needs to be done within our schools. And hopefully with the various technologies that's out here, we can implement that within our schools. But one of the things I try to do when I go out and talk to a business, schools, or houses of worship, I try to look at cost-effective ways and how we can do business. I know it's hard sometimes to walk into a business or a school and say, this is what it's going to cost you. You know, some things you have to spend money on, but you want to be mindful of, you know, what do you already have in place and how can we utilize what you have in place and improve and improve on that. So that's pretty much, you know, my gist with this slide. If you want to add any piece to this, Ashley, feel free.
Yeah, you know, I think that just something that comes to mind for me is the talk of schools receiving funding right now, right? And the argument is, well, they're not, you know, if they're not open, then they don't need funding, right? But this is a good point. They do still have to secure their facilities and secure their school and secure the stuff that's inside of it. And so that was just something that came to mind when you were talking about why schools need funding, regardless of if they're open or not, right? For these purposes right here.
And one of the things I'll also add to this, you know, of course, we're trying to figure out how to get through this pandemic. But one of the things that this pandemic has done for many of us, especially our businesses, schools, houses of worship, it's allowed us to open up our minds even more, meaning that we're on alert. Everything, you know, we're checking everybody that comes onto the property. We're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing because we want to ensure we're not, you know, contaminating anything. So I may go to a facility or go to a school and I'll maybe stop right away as to why am I here, what's going on, how can we help you, versus when things were open prior to COVID-19, there's so much traffic coming and going that you may not be stopped or ask any questions. So that's one thing I'll say about the COVID-19. It's allowed many of us to stop right in our tracks and get questioned as to why we're here, what business do we have, and moving forward. This
Yeah.
slide right here, keep a record of foot traffic and student activity. Again, you know, the goal is to reduce the spread of COVID-19. And of course, that depends on the catching cases early and contact tracing whenever possible. Now, one of the things I'll say this throughout the slides, prior to COVID-19, our focus was on the security measures of the active threat. It's still on that, and we can't forget about that. But right now, it seems that the shift has gone over to COVID-19, which it should, because you want to ensure, we're doing our part on that, but we can't forget about the active threat. And the bad actors know what's going on out here, and we have to continuously educate ourselves and stay, 2 steps ahead of them. So just keep that in mind, that while we continue to focus on COVID-19, we can't forget about the active threats that's still out there. So again, monitoring foot traffic. Schools, we need to act quickly, which we know they are. And but one of the things that you want to be mindful of, I don't know if all schools are doing this at the entrance of their buildings, is doing temperature checks. If you think about that, if they are doing something like that before they enter the school, that's, a lot of wasted time, if you ask me, because if you're having, students riding on a bus and they have to get off the bus, stand in a line, depending on where you live, you have to factor in the weather, the temperature. If you have students standing in line waiting to be temperature screened, again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of technology that's out here that can alleviate that. And I know Ashley's going to speak later on briefly about the technology piece that they do. I think is a great tool that they have, but you want to be mindful of the temperature checks, not just for your schools, but for your business as well. Because again, if I'm going to a location, say the airport, and most airports, you have to park your vehicle and walk, into the terminal, to your gate. By the time you do all that walking and get to your location, I mean, your temperature may be at an elevated level, and then you're going to have to be, pushed over to the side for more screening. So that's why I'm kind of leery about some of these temperature checks that they speak of. But again, it's up to the schools, and I'll work with the schools to ensure that I give the proper recommendations on, the various technologies that's out here. And then it's up to them as to who they would like to go with to assist them with that. As far as the footage and records of student movement, will also enable administrators to alert individuals who need to be tested before they spread the virus to family members and neighbors. Adopting monitoring solutions will also give administrators visibility into which areas are most heavily trafficked to help facilities social distancing. That's big right there, especially with our schools. That was one of the things administrators and the schools have been talking about as far as bringing the students back in. Do we have a full classroom as we've seen in the past? Do we limit the amount of students that we're going to have in a classroom? How are we going to configure the hallways that students have to go from class to class? If you're middle school or high school, I know at the grade school level, you're not so much moving around as you would in the secondary schools. So these are some of the things that you have to consider when you're dealing with school: the social distancing, the foot traffic. How do we ensure, folks may be coming into the schools? You have to limit that as well. If I'm a parent and I need to go by the school, you can't do things as we did in the past, because again, the more people that you have coming and going inside that school, is the likelihood of someone possibly bringing the virus into the school, and the whole job is not to do that. So just wanted to throw that in there with this slide. If you want to add, Ashley, feel free.
Yeah, I'll definitely talk about some solutions that are available, but the most important thing that I ask of all leaders out there who are looking to implement solutions, and I'll get into it a little bit more towards the end of this, is that you do your due diligence. You consult with, like Stacy, right? And you do the risk assessment ahead of time, the threat assessment, and you have that advisory council, if you will, to help support you in what solutions that are out there and what is going to be the most effective one for your campus. because all campuses are different.
Yes, thanks. All right, we'll continue to talk about some more tips when dealing with your schools. This first one right here, bubble that we see, no assemblies, sports games, or parent-teacher conferences. Now, again, I'm in the South, in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia area, or just outside of Atlanta. Football is big here. They have been playing football, soccer, you know, all your different activities that are held outside. I have seen those being held at the schools. There are measures in place for these outdoor activities, meaning, you know, you may have to wear a face mask. They may not allow, they may only limit a certain amount of people into the facilities, and you have to social distance as you're sitting on the bleachers. I've seen that, especially with the school in my neighborhood. You know, they have a very great football team. And one of the things that you have to keep in mind is the social distancing as you're sitting on the bleachers at the football games. Now, of course, if your child is involved in some of these activities, it's probably going to be your immediate family members that they're going to allow into the games. Some of the things you also want to consider when dealing with sporting events or assemblies is, as opposed
to you purchasing tickets at the gate, you can possibly purchase these tickets online before you actually get to those activities. So those are some of the things you want to keep in mind. Class sizes. I talked about that briefly. Again, prior to COVID-19, those are some of the things we saw in place, large classroom sizes. So class sizes of 12 or fewer, that's why you have to have a split schedule, meaning depending on how they want to do it, if they want to go by last names or go by your first name, say, okay, this last name group will come to school on Mondays and Tuesdays, and this group will come on Tuesdays and Thursdays, to alleviate having a certain amount of students in a classroom, and they can practice that social distancing by doing it that way. So just keep that in mind. And Ashley, feel free to add to this if you like as well.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing that I'll add is about the technology. So you're going to see technology towards the end of this that is going to give you the ability to manage, your visitors by A and B days, or by, shifts, or things like that. So there's a lot of different solutions out there. I know it all seems very overwhelming to make all of these changes and to implement all of these new procedures, but there is a lot of technology out there that is readily available to you to help you to support your efforts here.
And one of the things I'll add to this, again, we're still dealing with the outdoor activities. Eventually, the basketball season and other sporting events and assemblies, we're eventually going to go back to the indoors. So that's going to look much different than it did last year. And again, I know volleyball season here in Georgia is going on, and the gym is not as crowded as it was prior to COVID-19. So you're going to have to limit the amount of people that you allow into the facilities to help cut down on this. And as we continue to see the numbers rise, that's another thing that schools are going to have to look at. Do we continue on with the season, or do we cancel out the season? As far as the football season, high school football season goes, I know probably 10 minutes from my house, you had, a football player test positive with COVID, and they had to cancel some of the games. Again, these are some of the things that we have to keep in mind. I know parents, kids that are involved in activities, they want to see these activities go on. And one of the things as parents we have to do is continuously educate our kids on being safe. So even if you have a split schedule, meaning okay, on Mondays and Tuesdays, Stacy will be in school, and then on Thursdays and Fridays, Ashley may be in school. But who's to say that those kids aren't seeing each other outside of school anyway, which I'm sure they are, but we just have to be smart and think better than what we're doing, because, you don't want, and that can happen in your business as well. Just because I have a certain group coming to work on a Monday and a certain group coming on Tuesday, who's to say that those groups aren't meeting up at a restaurant, on certain days, and they're all commingling, and then they say, okay, we're going to bring it back to the office, because office space, they are open. Not all offices are open, but there are offices that are open, and people are coming into the office space and they're infected, and then lo and behold, you have to shut down the office space again. So one of the things this slide right here talks about is suggested schedules, as I mentioned, reducing the class sizes. Again, I think depending on, if your kid is able to handle this, but that's a decision that the parents will have to make if they're going to allow their kids to do virtual. I know that's tough for a lot of parents, because right now with working from home, You have your parents working online, and then you also have some of your students working online. So that's interrupting your parents' work schedule. You also have to factor in our educators. These educators, I take my hat off to them because they're doing so much right now with very little. And I know we're feeling the wrath as parents right now. So we know what teachers are going through or what they've been going through. Now that we have to play the parent and the teacher as well. So let's just continue to practice our patience for these educators because they're trying to do the best that they can, and we just have to be mindful of that. Younger kids first. The reason why I have this slide in here or this bubble in here, because as I mentioned earlier, when you start talking about your middle and high school students, they go from class to class and move in and around the hallways. Most of our elementary schools, unless they're standing in line being walked to the cafeteria, most students in the grade school level stay with the one teacher throughout the day. And not only that, depending on where you're located, if you're doing a full-day school or if you're doing a half-day school, that's something to consider as well once you start allowing the students to come back into the schools. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, a couple of things I just want to mention here, Stacy. It sounds like when you're doing your risk assessments with the organizations, with the schools, the churches, all of that, it's something that you discuss with them is not just a plan A, right? But a plan B, C, D, E, F, G for those cases where they're able to reopen, but then they have to limit some stuff, or they're able to reopen, but then they end up having to close, So it's very important, obviously, to make sure that you have all of those plans in place prior to reopening. And again, consulting with advisor such as Stacy to make sure that you're thinking from every angle. And then the other thing that I just want to say that I know I did at the beginning of the school year, when the teachers were reaching out and just checking in with the parents about virtual school and kind of just saying, hey, we're new to this and we're not really sure, we're figuring it out, please hang in there with us. Before the end of that call, I made it a point to just stop and just tell the teacher that I was speaking with, thank you very much for everything that you're doing. I understand that this is a very difficult time for you, for everybody. And I just want to say thank you for your efforts, because it means a lot to me as a parent, knowing that you're doing your best to help, my child in the best way possible. And most of them were almost in tears. And that wasn't my purpose, right? Was to get them in tears. But because I know that we all just run, and we go, and we just assume that people know that we're grateful for it. And so I just made it a point to express my gratitude and my appreciation to those educators, because I don't think they hear it enough. And so anyways, I would just share that with you guys, to just take a moment, reach out to your child's teachers, and just send them a thank you note.
Now, one thing I will add to that, Ashley, as we talk about, the configuration of our schools, I know we have a gentleman on the call, Jacob Phelps, and he works with Safewood Designs. I met this gentleman a couple of years ago, and they do fantastic work on, looking at the school entrance infrastructure and how to configure the doors and the windows from an active threat. Again, our focus right now is on the COVID-19, but Safewood Designs, they design various doors. They can put in various types of glasses in the school entrance as well as your business. How do you want to protect your lobby area when I walk into the entrance of your facility? So again, as many of us are working from home, there's so much going on, and we can't forget about the workplace balance, because businesses, they will open up their doors again, and schools will open up their doors again, and everything that's happening within your home, people are going to carry that over into the business as well as the school. And again, there's so much that's out here, and you want to make sure you're working with the right companies and the best technology. So it's not just being used for COVID-19, because once we get through this pandemic and you purchase this technology piece, how else can I use this once COVID-19 has passed? So moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, go ahead.
And moving forward with this slide right here, adopt surveillance tools such as Sentry, which Ashley is going to talk about. I know some people have been talking about the thermal cameras, which, I can't speak too much about them because I'm not the subject matter on that. But I know some of your airports have talked about adding thermal cameras at the airports so they can capture various temperatures. But again, as I mentioned earlier, if my vehicle, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, in the summertime, if my vehicle is parked at a certain location and I have to hike it to a bus or a shuttle bus and then run to get to my aircraft, my temperature may read differently than someone else's. So again, you just have to be mindful of your thermal cameras and the placement of those thermal cameras. If I'm going to place thermal cameras in my office facility, and the front of my office facility is all glass, what happens when the sun is out and that sun is hitting on top of that glass? That lobby area is going to be pretty warm out there. So again, you know, the placement of the thermal cameras and Sentry, as Ashley's going to speak to you guys briefly about as well, is some things you want to consider. So there's a lot of technology. I hate to keep harping on that, but you know, think about some of these things that can be utilized at your schools. I know as far as we didn't talk briefly about the buses, and that's one of the things that's going on here in my county. I've seen kids at the bus stop and they cannot get on a bus if they don't have on a face mask. If you don't have your face mask on, they won't allow that to happen. But I know, Ashley, you can speak briefly about that shortly, about ways around that. But right now, until you have something in place, that's one of the things they're doing in my county is students and the bus driver must have on a face mask before they can get on that bus.
Yeah, it's definitely really important to think about, you know, the time consumption of some of these processes and procedures that you're looking at implementing and making sure that you're not adding to, you know, the complications, right? And so I will go into a little bit more detail and share with you about Sentry and the integration with thermal cameras and things like that, and integration with like visitor management, emergency management, that can really streamline a lot of that for you guys.
All right. This right here is self-explanatory. Stepped up health and hygiene measures. These are some of the things I totally forgot. That's, you know, I'll take the blame for that. I have a slide that I meant to put in here of a picture that tells you what it will cost a school district, from, you know, your sanitation stations to various PPE masks, various things like that, how much it will cost a school. And again, like none of us, were expecting this to happen to us the way that it did. But now that it's here, we have to put these safety measures in place. So again, as we continue to deal with this pandemic, especially going into a school building, and depending on the building or where you live, let's look at the infrastructure of that school. One of the biggest things that schools had to do, and I hope all of them are doing it, is looking at the airflow within the school. A lot of this infrastructure may be old, depending on your school. It can be 10 years or plus old, and you may have to have someone come in and look at your HVAC system and say, okay, these are the measures that we need to put in place so we can know how the airflow is within the building. Because if you're going to have people inside that building, safety is paramount, and that's something that they have to consider. Also, I saw a question earlier, do we think masks will be considered standardized? I'm sorry, do you think masks will be standardized? I can't really speak to that. That's something that the school will decide, but I believe if you're in a classroom environment, schools are asking kids and educators to wear a mask. But of course, as you start to move around, it all depends on the airflow within the school, the temperature in the school. But I think that's something that we are seeing right now is the standardization of masks. I know the CDC, they just came out yesterday or today, I believe, about, you know, public areas, meaning your trains, your buses, your aircraft, that they're recommending that everybody wear a face mask when they're in these areas, because right now that everybody's working from home, depending on what city you live in, if you have a train system, you know, how many of us are actually getting on a train? How safe is it to get on a train? And if I do get on this train, you know, will I be the only one with a face covering on, or will everybody be required to wear a face covering on that train? I know right now you have to do that on an aircraft, and that's something that the CDC just put out, yesterday or sometime this week. So great question, Jacob, as far as the standardized mask. I don't know if that's been done in North Carolina, but as I come out and do my assessments on these locations, those are some of the recommendations that I can throw out there. If you're not allowed to get on a school bus because you don't have on your face mask, I'm pretty sure those are things that you're going to have on when you're inside the school. And I know that's a touchy subject, especially when you're talking about our grade school kids, because little kids, unless you talk with them, and I'm sure as parents we're doing that so much today, kids are intrigued by various things. I know if I have my lunch pail and I see that Ashley have a Twinkie or something in her lunch pail, I may want to trade off. Now, of course, I'm not going to do that today, but that's just how kids are. They're going to, see someone else's face covered and say, okay, I like that. Can we switch? And those are some of the things as parents that we have to educate and talk with our little ones about. And as a teacher, I'm sure they're keeping track of that on top of all the other things that they're doing. That's why I take my hat off to these teachers for what they're doing. As far as wearing a mask, temperature checks, hand washing, frequent sanitization, those are some of the things that we have to do on a regular, ensuring that we're using the sanitation stations. And I know those are things that are placed throughout the schools in various locations, hand washing, social distancing. Again, that can only work if you limit the classroom sizes on the social distancing. And the biggest piece for me, if I'm going to allow my student back into the building again, is the airflow within that building. How old is this infrastructure? Again, that's tough right there, because you can't just go in and rip down the school, but there are some things that you can put in place to ensure that the airflow and everything's being tested, and you're getting a positive test out of that versus getting a negative test out of that. So reach out to myself, Porter Global Security, and we can assist you with your various vulnerabilities and how to mitigate those vulnerabilities.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Stacy. I appreciate that. Before we move on to streamlining communication, did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we get to that?
No, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I know we're pressed for time. And again, I just wanted to put this information out. It's information that people probably already know and they're already seeing being done at their schools. But I think I believe it's vital for us to have this conversation and continuously have this conversation, because again, depending on where you live right now, like I mentioned to you earlier, we're just below 80 degrees, but eventually that temperature is going to check. And, we're going to have to eventually deal with this twindemic, meaning the COVID-19 on top of the flu. And these are things that we have to keep in mind. So all the things that I talked about, from your sports, from moving inside with the temperature change in the wintertime, will we be able to see certain sports continue on, or will they have to cancel out? We just have to continue to talk, follow the guidelines of the CDC and do our part, as human beings, and be safe out here. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Stacy. So as we're thinking about, doing these risk and threat assessments and working with security advisors like Stacy, who are going to help us with plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And looking at implementing new solutions and new products and new procedures, right? The one thing that I want you all to keep in mind is, how are you going to streamline that communication? How are you going to keep everyone connected and informed? Because it's so important, right? Effective communication, as Melissa Agnes, founder and CEO of the Crisis Ready Institute, says, requires all remaining aligned with the organization's values, truly understanding your stakeholders so that you can know what's important to them, get ahead of their inquiries, and being in a position to effectively meet them on their turf. And what does that mean, right? That means that you need to connect and engage your stakeholders. You need to understand how this is going to impact them. What are their expectations? Why are we changing these processes and procedures, right? And you also need to understand all of this so that you can identify how, what you can expect is what their reactions are going to be, right? And then when it comes to communicating all of these new practices and procedures and implementation of these solutions, you want to make sure that you're engaging your stakeholders in the process. It's so important that you develop the strategy that is engaging with them. Get their feedback, understand what their pain points are too. They may have different pain points than you, right? So you also want to know all of your stakeholders' pain points so that when you are looking to implement solutions, that you're finding a solution that will encompass as many, to solve as many of those pain points as because then you will get their buy-in. If they feel heard, if they feel like you're engaging with them in the process, they're going to trust you, they're going to have confidence in you that you're doing what's in everyone's best interest, right? So you may, as a leader of implementing these solutions, know that you have the confidence and you have the knowledge and you have all of the expertise behind you, and whatever you implement is the most amazing thing in the world. But have you communicated any of that to them, right? Have you communicated the why to them so that they also believe that, and they believe in you and they trust in you, and they're confident that you're making the right decisions to keep our campuses safe, or to keep your campus safe, right? So as far as internal communication, because obviously you have different stakeholder groups, right? So you're going to, sometimes the communication between internal and external is going to be a little bit different, right? But the important things to remember about internal communication is that you need to keep your people informed, because if they know what's going on, then they're going to help support your mission, help support that implementation process, right? And it also helps build your organization's work culture, right? Everybody's on the same page, everybody is engaged, there's transparency, there's trust, and then there's more opportunities for people within the company, to learn, to be trained, and to feel connected. They are more engaged in the process when they feel included. And it creates an environment that's open to feedback, debate, and discussion, which is super healthy, right? You need feedback. If you're looking at implementing a process or procedure or solution, you're going to want to take it to your team, the team of people that knows the heart of your organization the most, right? They're going to be able to help you with that broad perspective, and they're going to be able to help you with feedback and just that discussion, that brainstorming that needs to take place in order to effectively implement these processes and procedures. And, it improves overall employee experience. And we all want our employees to be happy, because if we take care of them, then they take care of everybody else, right? All of the stakeholders. So we just want to make sure we're engaging at all levels. Your C-suite needs to be involved, or your executive leadership team, or your all the way up in your school, the principal, the vice principals, everybody needs to be involved, all the way down to, even the students. Why not get the students involved in a mastermind session? Let them know what types of, get a brainstorming group together of maybe some of your most engaged students. Your parent group, right? Maybe your parents have, your PTA, right? You can engage them and involve them in the discussion as well. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but it's important to get their buy-in, because you will have a more successful implementation. Some communication strategy tips, explore and analyze your current strategy. So these are some of the things that you're going to do before, during, and after, right, the brainstorming process. It will help you get your messaging consistent. You want to look at providing a platform or a way for employees to be able to share their voices so that you can crowdsource that information. So it's not just, oh, we need to get together on a call, or we need to get together in a meeting. You have a technology solution that allows you to crowdsource that information. So many of you know me for working with PunchAlert. PunchAlert has an announcement module. You can send out an announcement, and you can offer the option for them to comment back on that announcement. That is key, right? You're giving them that two-way engagement that is so necessary to sending out, hey, this is my vision of what I'm trying to achieve to keep our campus safe. What is your input? So it's not always about hopping on calls and getting in meetings with people. It's just about being able to, again, meet them on their turf. They can receive that announcement, they can respond when they have a minute to do so. So again, just different ways that you can engage them throughout the process. You definitely want to avoid communication overload, right? So there's a fine balance. You don't want to over communicate, you don't want to under communicate. So you'll definitely have to find that balance. And then of course, embrace technology to streamline those communications. We talked a little bit about the announcement module in PunchAlert. There's also a tips module in PunchAlert that allows for you to like see something, share something. And so again, just giving them a way to communicate their concerns, their needs to you. And then of course you want to evaluate those that communication progress. And ultimately, without an internal communication strategy, your company's values get lost. Employees are confused about their employer. They are and they feel less informed, which in turn equals less productivity and much less engagement, which we absolutely want to avoid. So as effective external communication, as we talk about that, it is going to be similar to your internal communication, but it's about implementing, educating, and training, right? So you're going to have company policies that guide employees on what kind of information to share outside of the company. That's going to be important. Your employees need to know what information they can share, who they can share it with, and how they can share it. So that needs to be very, very clear. Typically, I encourage any communication that you share with your employees should be able to be shared with others. Then you don't have any issues, right? So just keep that in mind. And then, of course, you're going to assume that everything will be made public. So consistency and transparency is important, and that supports the statement that I just made earlier. You want to definitely just like I said, transparency, consistency, and the messaging is so important. And then, of course, monitoring and being strategically proactive and proactively reactive is essential, right? So you want to be 2 steps ahead or multiple steps ahead, right? So that you don't have to be reactive to a situation. You're going to understand why they're having that reaction, and you're already going to have an answer for it. So develop a clear and consistent messaging, right, concerning the change, understanding how to change, how the change will impact your clients and customers, designate who will be in charge of communication, determine how and when to communicate, help clients and customers adapt to change when possible. It'll make your job a lot easier. Oh, sorry, I skipped through. And then, of course, embrace technology to streamline communications. And just some thought-provoking questions here. What is the most effective means of communications to reach out to our stakeholder groups directly? I just want you guys to think of these thought-provoking questions. And then comparing and contrasting against what communication solutions do you currently use, and where are the gaps? Where can you implement solutions that will help you streamline that communication? And so I talked to you a little bit about PunchAlert, but today I want to focus on Sentry, because I think that Sentry is something that is just so critical to, like Stacy was saying, if you have split schedules, or if there's, you need to crowdsource that information of who's on your campus and when they're on your campus, so that you can notify the right people if there is an outbreak. You need them to do their self-checks at home before they get to school, so it streamlines, the ability for them to get into school. I've seen this in action. The PunchAlert CEO has seen this in action at local schools where the headquarters is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And, they have different lanes. They have a lane where you've done your self-check, and it's like almost like a fast pass, right? It's a fast pass lane that gets you through. And then for the lane that hasn't done the check, obviously it's a little bit slower, but you still have the ability to quickly download the Sentry app and do your self-check and do your temperature check and get your pass, essentially. And so here's just Sentry, the easiest way to empower your community to self-report on their health before arriving on site. You see this person has received their Sentry pass. It's scannable, so when you get to the site, if it's a parent's phone, they're dropping off the child, they can scan, with the administrators at the school. They'll see that they've taken their temperature check. They can see the temperature on the pass. They can see that it's the child who did the temperature check and answered all the questions in order for them to get a pass to come on site. So again, just streamlining that communication. It also, when you do that check-in, it checks the child into the school. So now that that child is on campus and that they've checked in. So it also is a basic visitor management system as well. Now, if you have an emergency on campus and you need to report that emergency or mass notify others, like parents of those children who are on campus, now you have an active list of people who have their child at school and educators and staff and everyone else who is on campus during that emergency. So it gives you that real-time location awareness and real-time list of people who is there. Now here's just a few simple taps on your screen. So you have the Sentry app built right into PunchAlert for you. You click on that button, it takes you through your survey process. Are you experiencing one or more of the following symptoms? You go through the survey process, you answer the questions, you take your temperature, you submit your temperature with your picture, and then you hit next, and then it grants you your pass. In this area, obviously we have the PunchAlert logo, but you would have your organization's logo. So you would know that it's a pass for your organization. You can also, if you don't have the PunchAlert app, that's fine too. You can do all of this from a web console in the comfort of your own home, and it still grants you a pass. You can print it out if you want to. And obviously you can also access this web console on your smartphone as well. So you can pull up that pass and they can do the same thing and scan it. So here's a picture of the user portal, and then there's an admin portal. And of course I can go into more detail, but I'm not going to do that today. I really just wanted to show you a solution that's out there and that's available to you that can help you streamline that check-in process that we're all having to do when we go into various facilities, not just schools, businesses, even restaurants, right? I've seen where you have to fill out the piece of paper and, say that you haven't had any of these symptoms. So this solution can even help them. So if you do know of organizations that just have that very manual process that you would like to introduce them to Stacy or myself so that we could talk to them a little bit further about how they're managing that process, we would be happy to do so. But ultimately, please do your due diligence. There's solutions out there to help you. I appreciate your time today. And if you have any more questions, here's our contact information so that you can reach out to us anytime. We're happy to engage in a conversation with you. Maybe I speak for Stacy too, but I kind of geek out on this kind of stuff. So please, I'm seriously saying this is my contact information. I'm happy to have a brainstorming session with you guys anytime. So thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to answer any questions if you have anything. And Stacy, please, I kind of just breezed through that because I was trying to get through and stay on time and on track. Is there anything that you would like to add to what I was talking about with effective communication?
I do have something. If you can briefly just talk to the audience about the privacy issues. I know that's been a talk for a lot of people when it comes to technology. Well, what's going to happen with my information? What are they going to do with it? So I don't know if you can speak to that briefly.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are absolutely HIPAA compliant. We are, I can't think of the other compliancy, but because we do have students in our system, we have to have extra security. I mean, we meet and exceed the levels of privacy and security. And if you go to our website at punchalert.com, we have our whole legal page that has all of our terms and conditions and privacy policies on there. But we absolutely follow, like I said, the HIPAA compliancy, and I can't remember the other one. It has completely left my mind, but we're absolutely compliant across the board. Me as a mother of 5, it's very important for me to make sure that I am promoting companies that are doing their due diligence to, maintain privacy and maintain security. And so you have my stamp of approval when it comes to PunchAlert, when it comes to Sentry. They do meet and exceed privacy and security practices.
Thanks.
That was a great question. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions for myself or security related, or any questions in the chat?
I'm looking to see if we do. Let's see. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging in there with us. I don't see any other questions right now. Stacy, I just want to say, what is your typical kind of process when you meet with an organization and you do the security assessment with them? What does that time frame look like? You know, if they're looking to get something done quickly, is that doable? Does it take a little bit of time? Can you talk a little bit more about maybe what that looks like?
Yes, again, the schools are very unique because of the size. So when you talk about a risk assessment or doing a physical security assessment, you don't want to rush through that. And prior to me even coming out, you know, I want to give it 110%. I don't want to shortchange anybody. And what I try to do is, you know, just have that consultation with you up front, talk about the various things that we may have to do. I also send out a pre-questionnaire. If I'm going to go do an assessment on a facility, I'll send out that pre-questionnaire. And, you know, depending on my contact, that contact that I'm dealing with can have it filled out, have it sent back to me. So now I have all that information in front of me. And when I get to your location, now we can start processing this. Okay, take me to this space here. You check yes, no, or, you know, you don't have it. I like to look at it and figure out, you know, is it in the right place or is there something that needs to be added? So again, you know, it starts, as I tell people with your risk assessment, I like to start out and work my way in, because if you have a perimeter fence, I want to look at that. How many access points do you have within that perimeter fence? But it all depends on the size of the facility. If it's small, of course, it'll be me. But if it's something like a school, I'll probably have a team, of course, come out, because schools are a soft target, which we've seen with cybersecurity. So I may have a cybersecurity rep on my team so they can focus on that piece there. And I'll look at the other pieces as, you know, folks are looking at the other pieces within the schools. But you don't want to rush through something like that, because you want to make sure you're able to capture all the various vulnerabilities. But not just that, I want to be able to capture best practices. So if I see something that you're doing, how can I take that and pass it on to another business and say, hey, this is what I've seen throughout my assessment time. Maybe this is something you can try with your company to see if it fits, if that all makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. I completely agree with you that it should not be quickly done. It's something that you do need to spend time assessing to make sure that you are reopening safely and hopefully able to stay open safely. So I definitely think that's important. The one thing that I will mention about timing of, you know, the Sentry solution, if you did need to implement something very, very quickly, if you were tired of the paper documents, if, you know, you didn't, if you could not have like, you know, a physical person standing there doing the temperature checks, you know, Sentry is something that you could sign up for today and implement within an hour. I mean, it's that quick. It's very, very simple solution. You know, and that's another thing that I love about it. The other thing I love about it is that it's ever evolving, right? So as people are coming on with Sentry, we're getting feedback from our users, and we're adding and enhancing to the solution almost on a daily basis. And so I love that PunchAlert loves to work one-on-one with our customers and really understand their pain points and really understand where the gaps are, so that we can help them, you know, close those gaps as much as possible and solve those pain points. And I know Stacy does exactly the same. He's very, very involved. He has that broad perspective. He absolutely wants what's best for you and your organization. And so, you know, just if you have any questions, like I said, his contact information is there, and he would love to get on a call with you and just brainstorm with you as well. So I don't have any other questions here. If there's anything else you wanted to add, Stacy, I want to be mindful of everybody's time.
Nope, that's it. I really appreciate everybody taking the time out to listen to us today. I apologize I didn't have a fun joke for Thursday going into the weekend, but I just want to just relax, have fun, and just get the information out there. I know right now we're all pinned up in the house and we're limited to where we can go and what we can do. But, you know, let's just take one day at a time and get through this together and do what we're supposed to do. So feel free to reach out to myself or Ashley. And if I don't have the answer, I can look it up and get back to you, or I can turn you on to someone else. I'm all about helping. And it's not, you know, so much, okay, what can you do for Porter Global Security? Right now, you know, doors are closing and may not be able to open again. People are being furloughed. So you have to show some empathy right now and just do your part. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is my business, but you also have to show some empathy and just, you know, let people know that you care and you're there to help them out and work with them.
Yeah, you are an amazing resource, Stacy. I know you have been to us at PunchAlert, so thank you very much for everything that you've done. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. There's a survey that's going to pop up on your screen at the end. We'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear what you want us to talk about next. And also check out some of our other webinars at porterglobalsecurity.net. I think Stacy has some videos up there. He definitely has the blogs that came with the webinars there, but we'll also share some links in the email that we send out after the webinar with the recording and with the presentation slides. So thank you so much, everybody. We hope you have a wonderful Thursday, and reach out anytime. We look forward to hearing from you.
All right, bye.